Liael Odium, one of the most anticipated cards that came out in set 5 and just released in Japan. So let's go through what the deck kind of looks like and my initial thoughts on this deck. Been playing it a couple days now, couple weeks, well, not even a couple weeks, couple days now. And I think the deck is pretty good. I think the deck is pretty formidable into the format at the moment. And, you know, let me just share my thoughts and kind of just run it through and see what's up. So the deck log for this, please search it up in the Japanese deck log, so 1LAKZ. I'll post it in the description as well, but let's just go through everything and kind of see how the deck kind of works, right? So starting off with the starter. Starter is just a starter. That's that. You can actually use any starter, which is pretty cool, if I'm not mistaken. So the grade 1, pretty much when it rides over grade 0, you reveal a Liael from your ride line and you get the timepiece. So the timepiece is a token that essentially allows you to add regress gauge. The grade 2, when it rides over the grade 1, you are able to put a card from your hand into the, put it as a regress gauge, and then you draw 2. This is really important, and I'll show you guys a combo later in this video. For the early game, and it's really important that there's certain sequencing that happens in the early game to essentially maximize it, right? Cool, so that's the grade 2. Pretty simple skills, nothing too crazy. And then Liael. So Liael Odium, this card is, yeah, pretty pricey apparently. The secret is very, very pricey. But yeah, looks amazing, very, very amazing art. Like, can't ask any more for that. So she has essentially 3 skills. So the first one is a continuous Vanguard skill for each distorted bane in the regress gauge. Your front row gains +5. So it's really important that you try to get as many distorted banes in your regress gauge as soon as possible, right? The idea is you pretty much get like a Persona ride on grade 3 ride, which is insane. Like no other deck does it. And then you combo that with, you know, Persona ride, so you scale to 20 to 30k to the front row. Really, really strong. The second skill is Auto Vanguard Circle. When this unit attacks, you can soul blast 1. Choose one of your reguards or a card from your hand and put it as the regress gauge. This unit gets triple drive, and that's pretty much it, right? It's really important that this card combos well with the grade 3 support that I'll talk about in a sec, Anacron Dragon, because essentially it kind of loops each other. Yeah. Then the Divine Skill, Auto Vanguard Circle. At the end of the battle that this unit attacked, if you have 5 or more regress gauge, you can discard 2 cards and you get an additional turn. The ride and main phase is skipped during your additional turn, right? So, you know, you attack with this first, attack with your 2 rear guards, given that you proc the Divine Skill at the end of this battle, and then you pretty much stand, draw, get your energy, and then attack again. Right, this obviously eliminates the Persona ride going into the additional turn, but which is why it's really important to get the regress gauge with 4 distorted banes as soon as possible. So we talked about Anacron Dragon. This card is pretty much your bread and butter for the deck itself. So Anacron Dragon, its skill is from the regress gauge. If at the start of your battle phase, you can counterblast 1, call this unit out, and then choose a card from your drop zone and put it as the regress gauge. Oh, sorry, you have to choose the card from the drop to make as the regress gauge first, and then this comes out. The second effect is Auto Rearguard Circle. When this unit attacks, if you have 3 or more regress gauge, this unit gains +5k, and then you may pay Energy Blast 2 and retire an opponent's rearguard. So you can see that this card essentially has board wipe, and it really works well with the new Shenri clone, Philia. We'll talk about her in just a moment. So the deck obviously runs 4, absolute staple in the deck. I'm hoping that, you know, one more set of support will give this deck like even more synergy with a lot of cards. But yeah, you know, the deck is really strong so far. 3 Liaels for Persona Ride, which is normal. Then we run this Colossus. So this Colossus is like Alamaniac or Elamaniac Colossus. So essentially the skill is When it's placed on rearguard auto skill, when it's placed on rearguard, you can counterblast 1, draw a card, and soul charge 1. This is really important because you need to draw into your pieces, right? It doesn't matter if you soul charge your Distorted Banes because essentially they get put into the regress gauge anyways if you're cycling through Anacron Dragon, but you need to see the Anacron Dragon, right? So you need to see that. You also need to see your Avarice Wrestler to be able to get your Distorted Banes into effect, right? So it's really important that you draw, and this card does it. This deck doesn't use pretty much any CB at all, which is pretty wild. So yeah, you know, a draw and a soul charge 1 is really, really good. Yeah. The continuous rearguard circle, if you have 3 or more regress gauge, this unit gets boost. Very important as well, because essentially if your opponent doesn't take this out, you just push it to the back, you promote like Anacron Dragon, and you just get 3+, right? So pretty much your columns are 23, 28 with the EB2 of Anachronos, and then say you have like 4 Distorted Banes, that's like plus 20, so that's like a 48k attacker on each side. Plus Persona Rise 58, really, really strong. So yeah, this card, really strong, really good utility card for the deck. Can't really ask for more. Then Tisar. So Tisar, everyone knows, is your EV cycler. It's, yeah, you just get like a 15k booster if you end up Persona riding, but mainly it's a 3-5k shield for Energy Blast 3. This deck doesn't use much Energy Blast other than Anacron Dragon. Then the Shenri clone. So this is a new promo that released in Japan, really expensive at the moment. So hopefully they distribute it in the global side, just like they did with Shenri. Essentially it is Shenri. So when this unit boosts, if your opponent has 1 or less rearguards, or if you played a normal order this turn, this unit gains +5. At the end of battle, put it into soul and draw 1. Really good because your Anacron Dragon essentially controls your opponent's board. So if you have, like, in the early game, you have the Shenri clone, you go second, you attack for 21, it's pretty much immediate damage, yeah? You keep on the board, the moment you play the Distorted Bane, you just put it into soul and you just draw, right? So early commit with that card allows for pretty much an early game, really strong early game, and then it recompensates itself if it doesn't, you know, get retired or whatever. Put it into soul the moment you use Distorted Bane on turn 3. Really, really strong card, like can't really ask more. This card actually fuels so many decks at the moment, it's actually crazy. Then looking at the PG, so you run 3 PGs, 1 Elementaria, pretty normal stock standard stuff, and then you play 4 Avarice Wrestler. So this card is really strong. So it serves 2 purposes. So you discard a card to essentially discard an order, and you can use the order. So ideally what you want to do is you want to discard a Distorted Bane, search for the Distorted Bane, then use the Distorted Bane that you discarded off this effect, and then you activate the order, right? So you soul charge 1. If it gets placed in the regress gauge, then you draw 1. Vanguard gains +10. But the most important bit is that you get 2 in cycle, right? At any point from turn 3 to turn 4, you need to have 2 Distorted Banes in cycle so that you essentially get 4 into the regress gauge. So essentially it's your 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th copy of Distorted Bane, which is really crucial, and which is why it works really well with this Colossus. Pretty much if you draw into the Wrestler, you're safe, right? Really, really good. Then we play 3 Gangaram. This is actually a flex slot, but I feel that it's worth the spot purely because of the Soul Blast 3. Your Soul, you actually don't use your Soul at all, other than Liael's Soul Blast 1, but otherwise you don't use Soul. And maybe, yeah, I don't think there is anything else that uses Soul, right? Yeah, I'm fairly sure that's the only card that uses Soul. So pretty much if you place this as a booster in the early game, you can just randomly just Soul Blast 3 and draw 1, which is really good, right? And it recurs as the turn goes on. So your hand just naturally gets big because of the amount of Soul Charge that you have, right? So you Soul Charge off your Distorted Bane, your Anacron Dragon, your Filias, and you just have all this excess Soul that you're not using anyways. So yeah, very, very strong card to, I guess, have as an engine in the deck. And again, it promotes the drawing into your pieces. So like your Anacron Dragon, your Wrestlers, and pretty much your Distorted Banes. Yep. Let's talk about the orders before we go into the triggers. So we play 4 Distorted Banes. This card is beautiful, amazing art. Essentially, you can play it as long as you have a Liael Vanguard. If you play as a normal order, you soul charge 1 and put this as the regress gauge. Note, the second effect, the order effect, does not require a Liael Vanguard, which is why this card is ridiculous in the early game, right? So the second skill is auto. When this card is put into the regress gauge, you draw 1 and give your Vanguard plus 10k. This is so important, right? So why is this important? Because essentially what you do is you put your Anacron Dragon in the regress gauge using your right line skill. Anacron Dragon does not have a restriction to call it out, right? So if your opponent gives you a counterblast, you essentially counterblast 1, call this out, and then you swap a Distorted Bane from your discard pile into the regress gauge. And because you're doing that, you essentially draw 1 and your Vanguard gains plus 10. So imagine trying to guard like a 20k or 28k center column, and then your opponent has to deal with a 13k Anacron Dragon boosted by a Filia that is like what, 26k on turn 2. That is ridiculous, right? Can't really ask for more for an early game, and I think this deck really needs an early game because it only attacks 3 times. That's just it. There's no multi-attack with this deck. It only attacks 3 times, right? So it's really important that, you know, you get this in the early game. You try to push the damage threshold with your opponent, and then get them to a point where it's like 4 to 5 damage. Pretty much if they're at 5 damage, it's over, right? Then we play 1 Union the Sky. So this one is because you don't really use EB in this deck other than, I guess, your Tiscars. Your Tiscars are there because you don't use EB. This is also there because you don't use EB, right? So Anacron Dragon is the only card that uses EB, so you might as well have a 4th copy. This can be technically replaced with Tiscar. Either one works, but I think, you know, just having a 25k shield is really good, especially because this deck is slightly fragile. If you don't get your pieces, if you don't get your draws, you just don't have the hand, right? Sure, you might have like triple drive or whatever, but yeah, just having a 25k shield is good. And then again, it has like the Tiscar related skill, right? If you discard for ride line, you can EB3, remove this card and draw 1. So yeah, you know, 2 purposes, and why not, right? Then the triggers, so we run 4 heals, 8 vanilla crits. Really important, it's vanilla crits, because there is never a point in the game where you want to use your effect crit to put into soul and plus 2k. There's just never a time, right? You're always attacking for like, you know, 13k booster, 10k booster, 10k booster. Like, there's never a time. The only time is like, maybe you have like a plus 2k to add to like an 8k booster, but then you're compromising the power on the other side. So there's literally no point, right? So 8 vanilla 8 vanilla crits, 4 heals, 3 fronts. Fronts are really strong in this deck because you essentially want to attack Vanguard first. But there are some times where, you know, you only have your 1 Anacron Dragon, so you want to attack with Anacron Dragon first. Bind the regress gauge the Anacron Dragon off the Liael skill. Then maybe fronts aren't that great, but a lot of the time you just, you know, use your fronts because you're, you know, attacking Vanguard first. The OT slot is actually pretty interesting. I don't actually know if blue OT is correct. I'll put it there purely because you need stuff. If you're soul charging a bunch, if you're soul blasting a bunch, you have access to everything in your bin. So sometimes, you know, you can just pick up free PG, just a card that allows you to get to the next turn. Really strong. You can get your fronts, you're soul charging a bunch, right? And then if you are missing like, you know, 1 more Distorted Bane in like turn 2, turn 3, you just like grab an Avarice Wrestler or like an Anacron Dragon or Distorted Bane. Like, you just have access to your bin, right? So yeah, which is why I play the blue OT. If you want to play more aggressively, I think the red OT is really good too. Purple OT is a bit weird because essentially you actually want to stay at 5 damage and never heal down on your kill turn. If you heal down, that means your opponent has the opportunity to heal at 4, and that's not good. Yeah, so yeah, the OT slot you can kind of compromise for whatever. You can also use Dark States one, makes your Vanguard column gain 10k in crit, but I think if at that point you need the 10k in crit, like your opponent's already guarding the middle anyways. So it's, you know, it's counterintuitive. And like your deck is just a bunch of crits, right? You're like, sure, you're drawing into a bunch or whatever, and you have triple drive. Like you hit a crit, your opponent's dead, right? So yeah, I feel that the blue OT just gets you over the hump, just gets you to where you need to be for the kill turn. So I guess a few other choices or alternatives that you could run would be Orion. Orion is the grade 2 that is the default clone to get your board. You can swap it out for Tisar. I find that Tisar is better because you're drawing into your stuff, whereas you're not really actively searching for stuff. Because if you're trying to search for Distorted Bane, you can't get that from Orion. But in the same token, you can go Orion into Avarice Wrestler into Distorted Bane, right? Or if you need a board, you go Orion into Philia into pretty much your whole board, right? And then you just compensate by just drawing, right? So this slot is, I guess, up to the player, to be honest. Like, you can swap it for Orion, that's completely fine. Other cards would be Servant Falcratia, but I think the deck just hit big already. Like, making, like, if you have a Falcratia boosted by a Colossus, right? It's like, what? If you put a grade 3 into Soul, it's 25k, plus 10, 35. Let's just say you have 4 Distorted Banes and Personalize, so it's like plus 30k, so what's that? 65? Like, I think that's pretty, like, excessive. 65, if your opponent can't guard 58, or like 53, your opponent's kind of dead. So I don't know, maybe that's a bit excessive, but then again, you know, if your soul is lacking because you're abusing Gangaram, then that means you're probably using Gangaram wrong. You essentially need 2 soul pretty much when you start to use the divine skill, because you need 1 for the immediate turn and then 1 more for the divine skill turn, right? So yeah, that's pretty much the deck. I feel that this deck has the same weakness as Blackmire. If people know how to play into this deck, it really drops in power. I feel that this deck also needs 1 more set of support to become really good. I don't know, I just feel like it's very piece reliant, but then again, you're like drawing into all your pieces anyways. A card that would be really good in this deck would be like something like a pseudo cutie paratrooper that allows you to tutor from soul to call out. That would be really good. Alternate cards would be like, you know, a replacement for maybe Avarice Wrestler to essentially get you Distorted Banes. Maybe a way to be able to search your Anacron Dragon, or maybe replace the Anacron Dragon like entirely, or maybe a way to be able to like boost up your regress gauge. But I think, you know, if you're divine scaling on turn 3, that is pretty busted, right? This deck opts to go first, so if you're rolling, you know, go first. Going first with this deck just pretty much destroys like literally everybody. But yeah, this deck is just really strong, right? There are times where like you don't get the Anacron Dragon and you just have the Distorted Bane in your hand. Sometimes like on your ride line, you just Distorted Bane into the regress gauge, give your Vanguard plus 10 and draw 1. It's really strong. You're already drawing 2 off the grade 2 ride line. So yeah, there's a lot of applications with this deck. So yeah, that's pretty much the deck. Feel free to, you know, try it out, see what it's like. I feel that the more you play it, the more you kind of understand how it goes. I've pretty much mentioned a lot of the simple plays. So like Anachronos into Distorted Bane into the early game, ride line into Distorted Bane, and then pretty much, you know, Colossus to draw into your stuff, pull the Colossus back, put something in the front, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So yeah, hope you guys like this video. Pop a like, comment down below what you guys think of Liael Odium. If you guys have played it, let me know in the comments how you guys feel about it. I think this deck is really cool. Might be a deck that I pick up for BCS. I feel that this deck is, you know, aesthetically pleasing. So, you know, if we get the Shenri Kalinin Global, then that'd be great. You know, I might be able to play this deck. Oh yeah, I guess another thing is like, what if you don't have Philia? It's pretty hard. Like, you need a grade 1 that allows you to draw, maybe Brainwash Swirler, up the Gangaram count. If you up the Gangaram count, maybe you can put like 1 more Tisar, and then the last 2 could be like Servant Falcratias or Brainwash Swirler. I think that's completely fine. Philia is nice because it gives you a soul to, I guess, propagate with Gangaram skill. So it works in conjunction, right? So yeah, that's pretty much what I would replace for Philia. So if you guys like this, pop a like, comment down below. If you guys haven't already, click that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.